Hi, this is Daniel Hutchins, and today we're going to do a video about what Warner Brothers should do to finally fix the future of the DC Extended Universe. Okay, so heading into the weekend of for release Warner Brothers DC Extended Universe superhero team-up films, Justice League hopes to finally pass the opening domestic weekend total of Marvel Studios' The Avengers in 2012. The box office results so far for Justice League have unfortunately been lower than expected or needed. Now keep in mind, guys, this is a fucking old article, so yeah. Anyway. The box office results so far for Justice League have unfortunately been lower than expected or needed, with roughly 580 plus million dollars worldwide after today's receipts are tallied, pointing to a likely final cum in the $635 to $655 million range, far short from the $750 million break-even point, or even the unrealistically lower $700 million break-even point some outlets claim it's more accurate. This has been just the latest in a string of problems besetting the studio's attempts to build a successful shared DC cinematic universe for the stable of major character brands. However, for 2013's Man of Steel was a success overall, but still fell short of Warner Brothers' box office expectations. The follow-up picture, Batman vs. Superman, faced merciless negative reviews and bad press, mixed reactions from fans, and performed far below the studio's box office expectations. The same year's villain team-up, The Suicide Squad, wound up performing quite well and ahead of expectations. But meanwhile, the aftermath of Batman vs. Superman saw the studio scrambling to change their DC Extended Universe plans. The result was an attempt to revamp the Justice League production on the fly, without delaying the imminent start of production, while the whole plan was changed. The one thing that was definitely went right was Wonder Woman, which became a major blockbuster and left everyone hoping that the DC Extended Universe had course-corrected itself enough to make the artists, fans, and critics happy with the subsequent releases. Justice League was to be a major test if whether Wonder Woman was truly a sign the studio had turned a corner, or was instead merely exception within the action plan, unable to pull itself out of a receive. Let me just note that for anyone who has ever read anything else I've ever written about DC movies, I'm a fan of DC Comics, a fan of most of the previous DC movies, and have personally liked the DC Extended Universe to date. So my assessment of the financial situation, realities of whether the studio's plans and approaches have worked or not, is a matter of business and math, not a subjective judgment of value or quality. So here we are, folks, in the aftermath of Justice League's sub $100 million opening weekend, and it's pacing toward what all signs suggest will be a final global tally that cannot honestly or accurately be described as anything less than a failure. Obviously, we can say that $650 plus million is objectively a lot of money. But that doesn't determine whether or not the sum represents success from a realistic business standpoint. It's sad that this has happened, and I regret terribly that it has to be said. But there it is. This doesn't mean, of course, Warner Brothers can't still manage to maintain some semblance of the current DC Extended Universe. They could decide to soldier onward and count on their next phase of film projects to finally start performing more in line with Wonder Woman and leave the hangover and baggage of other previous films behind. If Aquaman was a hit, and Wonder Woman's sequel is a hit the following year, and the Batman solo films hit in the next few years, they could also meanwhile continue greenlighting a few other projects and taking time to really make sure the scripts and plans are top-notch. The problem with that is, how much faith can the studio and investors have in plan that hinges on everything turning out okay, when so far that hasn't happened. There are many paths Warner Brothers could take that involve postponing a lot of harder decisions, trying to maintain some semblance of the present course and hope things turn out better. But it's my belief now that half measures and postponement of more significant change and choices isn't going to save anything, and will be more a sign of fear and uncertainty that is the exact opposite of what the studio and these brands need now. Now, which is why I personally have come to believe Warner Brothers should take a series of strong, decisive steps to deal with the flounder in a DC Extended Universe and plot an entirely new course. Some of this will be painful, but I think it's necessary, and will be far less painful the sooner it happens. Everyone has their opinions about these things, of course, and I'm sure plenty of readers will disagree with this or that particular item or whatever, but I'm convinced that these steps would result in a sort of plan capable of finally delivering to Warner Brothers the successful cinematic shared DC universe they've been chasing for the past several years. First reason is turn DC Films into a studio with full development and creative powers. Now, DC fans loathe comparisons to Marvel, but it's really true that a crucial advantage that the MCU has had so far is Kevin Feige's creative vision as a fan and producer overseeing a larger plan for a studio and its projects. Another advantage has been Marvel's status as a truly individual studio with powerful leadership capable of operating independently, so to speak, of Disney. Warner needs to realize that DC Extended Universe needs similar autonomy and a similar leadership capable of drawing up and carrying out a major plan of action. My personal suggestion is the head in an anonymous DC Films is Geoff Johns. There are many great writers in DC Comics, past and present, but Johns is among the best of all of them. In my opinion, the best working in the comics today. He also has keen sensibilities about superhero cinema as well, and takes all the right inspiration from DC's past on film. Johns' comic book writing for Green Lantern, Aquaman, Shazam, and Justice Leagues are pitch-perfect templates for the cinematic DC world on par with Marvel's MCU has accomplished in terms of tonal balance, critical acclaim, and mainstream audience appeal that includes families, both his own writing and the work from which he draws inspiration are examples of the sort of DC movies need in order to become a new chapter of greater success on the big screen. Wonder Woman is the DC Extended Universe film that so far provides the best glimpse of John's leadership, working with a filmmaker, Patty Jenkins, of course, whose own vision and sensibilities align with John's. It's also the most acclaimed and successful of the DC Extended Universe to date. I'd argue a cinematically comparable version of Batman could be found in Batman Begins, since it's the most fantastical and comic-like of the Christopher Nolan trilogy, with a balanced tone and a hopeful symbolism. Imagine a DC Extended Universe comprised of Wonder Woman, Batman Begins, and Man of Steel. If Superman's personality were more upbeat and the destruction of Metropolis were reduced by half, I think that's not far from the sort of DC Extended Universe we could hypothetically have in the future under Geoff Johns' leadership. Johns was heavily involved with the successful DC television properties, another good example of his demonstrating the needed sensibilities for tone and exploiting the potential of the various DC character brands, and was made co-chairman of DC Films with John Burke. However, DC Films is a division of Warner Brothers, rather than existing as a more anonymous studio akin to Marvel's status as Disney. My proposal is to make a division between Warner and DC Films. We're pronounced. Have Johns build a team around him, which I assume would include some DC Comics people, and some producers and writers from comic and film to get a newly independent studio on its feet and drawing up plans for the future, of which I'll get more specific in the rest of this list. Bottom line is, DC Films needs to be its own production studio with autonomy and leadership who can take aggressive and decisive action to develop a successful long-term plan for all DC properties on film. Second reason, the current DC Extended Universe should be allowed to play out with a few films and then ended. No matter what fans think of films so far, and no matter how much potential might exist to try to course correct the existing DC Extended Universe, the truth of the matter is course correction has already been tried in Justice League and didn't pan out for the brand. Likewise, the mixed reactions and repeated underperformances at the box office create too much baggage and weak foundation upon which to try to continue building. These characters are among the biggest IP in the world, with not only enormous box office potential but vast merchandising potential as well as exploitation in other mediums and across different platforms to maximize their brand potential. So far, the DC Extended Universe has damaged these brands, with even Wonder Woman possibly suffering a tiny bit of harm on a newly minted box office brand in the aftermath of Justice League. From a business perspective, it would be a mistake to keep sending good money after bad, especially when there is much better options on the table now. So here's how it should play out for remaining DC Extended Universe projects. James Wan's Aquaman is already finished and should of course be released. Patty Jenkins should make another Wonder Woman movie, or if she wants to complete a full trilogy, then offer her 2 more films and ask to film from them back-to-back, or a back-to-back release. David Sandberg's Shazam should be made as a separate standalone series unrelated to DC Extended Universe without any crossover, and Matt Reeves' Batman movie should be reconsidered and developed a newer trilogy of films that build a larger standalone Bat-Family universe unconnected to any other previously existing DC movies. Aquaman releases in 2018 and Wonder Woman sequels could be released in 2019, also 2020 if it's a full trilogy, and existing DC Extended Universe thus brought to a conclusion at that time. Meanwhile, Shazam plays out in its own self-contained superhero world, and the Batman series is delayed to allow full development of a larger Bat world by Matt Reeves. The Batman film issue is something I'll discuss in a later video, but so bear with me. But suffice to say, the next 4 years would see the release of 3 final DC Extended Universe movies within an existing framework, and then a final conclusion and version of DC characters on the film. There's a good argument for going ahead with the ties between this DC Extended Universe and Shazam, and while I still ultimately disagree, I'll note that if they do decide to keep Shazam as part of DC Extended Universe, when any crossover should involve Wonder Woman in a supported mentorship role for Captain Marvel in the first film. The problem with that is, any crossover means the entire future of Shazam series and the spin-offs are likely tied to the old version of DC Extended Universe instead of leaving Shazam as a separate entity for a larger world building of its own. And then later it could possibly be tied into a new version of DC Extended Universe once that takes shape. It's painful to commit to no sequels for Aquaman, especially since the current version literally exactly what I wanted and endorsed for the past 6 years, including Jason Momoa himself in the title role. And arguably, if that's a big enough hit, then my timeline for 2021 does allow for at least 1 sequel to be made. But my thinking is, it takes time and money to wait a full year until Aquaman is released, so determining whether it should get a sequel is a decision that in theory can be delayed, but in reality that ties up additional what-if space in the collective plan for these properties. At a time when it's best to reduce further risk while preserving as much of a brand and potential story inspiration from the comics as possible for a new future iteration of the DC Extended Universe. The only other film I believe might be hypothetically be a viable option for the next 4 year stretch is Harley Quinn of some sort, since Margot Robbie was a breakout star in Suicide Squad, which was panned by critics but at least performed well enough at box office. There seems to be potential for a $120 million budgeted film starring her in either a Mad Love or Gotham City Sirens release. My own feeling about that is the long run the brands benefit from a clean break to avoid any risk to the IP before a brand new approach gets underway. But there's a valid argument for cashing in one more time on this particular character's popularity if the right script comes together in time. The bottom line of that is, it's time to cut bait on developing new additional films and characters in the DC Extended Universe. Aside from the ones already finished, Aquaman are the ones that stand out as already proven successful investments. Wonder Woman, a clean slate, free of baggage, provides the most potential for the IP now. Third reason, DC films should then start over from scratch with a new DC Extended Universe. Spider-Man's franchise rebooted in 2012, after the end of Raimi's trilogy in 2007. Then Spider-Man was rebooted again in 2017, just 3 years after a 2014 stumble. The X-Men series has done soft reboots and altered its continuity repeatedly, emphasizing storytelling over strict adherence to the established cinematic canon. Batman ended his career in 2012's The Dark Knight Rises, only to be reborn 4 years later in a brand new incarnation in 2016's Batman vs. Superman. So audiences can definitely accept restarting a series and introduce a new version of character in close proximity to a previous big screen adaptation. With just 3 years in between one Batman and the next, I feel the DC Extended Universe can be slowly brought to a close, but the largely standalone Wonder Woman sequels, an Aquaman movie, and then rebooted a couple of years later. As long as the new films are great, audiences will show up and accept the changes. So after DC Films has made a more anonymous production company, and while the final few remaining movies within the current DC Extended Universe developed and finished according to the item above, the plans for building a brand new DC Extended Universe should go underway. With several years to plan to develop the products, DC Films should assemble a team to develop an overarching strategic plan for the future of DC movies. I think the good way to begin is to take a dozen main superhero characters and select 3 or 4 of the comic book stories that currently exist. For each character, the studio could map out an outline to serve as a framework for how each of these sets of stories fit together into a larger overarching DC Extended Universe story plan. The stories don't have to all directly overlap with a larger story, but rather just make sure they don't outright contradict one another and allow for some crossover if and when the products will benefit from it. Next, then take each character set in the stories and find a director and writer team to develop and loose adaptation of the stories over multiple films, creating outlines and treatments that DC Films core team will either approve or send back for changes. Each team of filmmakers would have greater control over their films, but within the context of developing it based on the needs of a larger plan, meaning use the chosen source material as inspiration, even if it's vaguely or loosely adapted. This allows solo character projects that still also exist within the larger DC universe, with marching orders handed out to allow each team to develop the best way of carrying out and succeeding in their mission. Over a period of several years, this process would essentially lay the groundwork for various individual films and trilogies and for the DC characters. Somewhere within this process, it will become clear where the trilogies and individual films align correctly to allow Trinity, Justice League, and other team-up products to fit into a plan. There would be plenty of solo movies first to avoid trying to move too quickly into big team-ups without having the emotional buy-in from audiences. But however, this method also allows the financing of the films to be treated as a single large-scale investment instead of each step hinging on the box office of the preceding film. Marvel got this deed right when they didn't blink from the Incredible Hulk's box office fizzle, and instead saw it as just one part of the larger groundwork being laid that when you pay off down the road, DC Films should divide up the movie plans into sets or perhaps 3-year periods and treat each film as pieces of a greater investment whole. For a particular period, the box office performance of any one project would never be enough to obstruct or stall the rest of plans, but it would allow adjustment to upcoming plans in subsequent phase, while any particular film's shortcomings wouldn't be a reflection of the larger plan itself. This slower and methodical development of an overarching plan of action would not be rushed and would instead transpire over several years, while some remaining DC Extended Universe projects already in existence to one extent or another could continue forward as explained above and the other reasons I said. To finish out the existing DC Extended Universe, after that DC Films would have the final treatments and several scripts already in place to launch a new and improved DC Extended Universe. Meanwhile, the Elseworld banner of DC movies should be postponed and no separate standalone unrelated project. We thought to see if some of them might work better as part of the rebooted DC Extended Universe. If not, then scale back to a number of such projects and push them down the road until after the new DC Extended Universe reboot has taken place. Sorry about that. Also, announcements of projects should only come once each project is actually ready to move into production, not during development stages or just a wish list of projects the studio wants to use to get the investors and the press excited. And the last reason I'm going to talk about today is make a deal for Matt Reeves to develop Batman films as a new Bat Family universe. We don't know yet the full details of Reeves' deal with Warner Brothers, of course, but it includes at least the potential for multiple films, so DC Films should expand the deal to ask Reeves to develop a series of multiple Batman movies that are part of a larger cast of Batman supported Gotham heroes within their own shared world unconnected to the previous DC extended universe. And yes, this is a brand new Batman, and yes, it builds its own new shared universe. Reeves would be given wide latitude, as he already has been to make his own Batman movies and world. But with the added request that he keep in mind that his films are going to be used to spin off a couple of other films. The Chris McKay, Nightwing, and Joss Whedon Batgirl projects would be part of this. This expansion of Reeves' plans would necessitate slowing down a bit and developing all three films' plans and story concepts carefully. And I mean carefully. And having plenty of talks about which characters to include and how to use them. The goal is to seriously make this a plan to create an entire world of Gotham City people with heroes and villains from Batman's cast of characters. Crucially, the first film wouldn't go into production in 2018. Now keep in mind, guys, this is an old article, as widely expected, and might instead begin shooting in 2019 for release in 2020. It has to be made clear in this deal that there won't be a repeat of a Chris Nolan situation where Luke could have Batman stories become the hands-off incarnation that cannot be used by other filmmakers down the road. If the Reeves Batman is as big a success as I think it will be, then DC Films has to be able to continue using that new incarnation of Batman as long as it wants. So no killing Batman off, or retiring him, or so on. Unless, of course, Reeves secretly plans some sort of closed-end adaptation of Batman Beyond or something like that. In which case, Reeves should definitely be allowed to make it in his own way, and any plans for Batman in a new rebooted DC universe should be developed separately within other DC planning by the core team working on the rest of rebooted DC Extended Universe plans. Why make sure the new Batman and his world are left intact for future use? Because this new Batworld and associated films, if they are successful, are going to be the new Batman and cast of Gotham City characters within the rebooted DC Extended Universe. Indeed, this Batman series will lay the foundations for the entire new DC Extended Universe. So there you go, guys. Those are just 4 strong, solid reasons as to why DC Extended Universe should change their act and get moving on it, because if they don't, then they're going to have disappointed fans. So if you guys get a chance, please subscribe to my channel, and you guys have a nice day. Thanks.